Welcome to the Purple Political Breakdown. Quick disclaimer before you watch this episode. It's much shorter, and I do apologize because this episode is very, very scuffed. If you want to listen to the full thing, I do appreciate it. We decided to keep it in because although it's kind of scuffed and there's a lot of technical difficulties and the guests had to leave early, it was very funny as well. So there's a lot of comedy, there's a lot of kind of jokes that we're making, so we're just having fun. We do talk about the pros and cons of unions, so that's good, obviously. But if you want to check it out, this scuffed episode, probably the most chaotic episode we've had so far, feel free. Appreciate you guys and enjoy. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Riddell Lewis, here with my co-host, Paul. And today we're going to be talking about unions, the pros and cons, the solutions of how unions should or should not work in America. And this is actually a conversation I've already had, but, technical difficulties. I'm not going to do it again. This won't happen again. I've three strikes you're out. It won't happen a fourth time. So this time we're gonna have a great conversation. And obviously to have that conversation, I have a great guest today, and that is Jonathan. So how you doing? How's your day been?
Doing really well. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. So we're gonna dive into the conversation per usual. Talk everything about unions, and before we do that, we're gonna start off with a what you need to know. What is going on currently in American society? So I have three things, and I'll be curious to see how you guys want to chime in. First things first. Michael Orr, a football player, filed a petition to end the conservatorship from the Tennessee couple, the couple that inspired The Blind Side and how Michael Orr inspired The Blind Side. Apparently, he's very angry with how they handle his conservatorship, and because of that, he wants to end it. He wants to sue them and get money or get the money and the benefits they got from the movie. Apparently, he was basically shut out that deal. Also, a British nurse was found guilty of murdering 7 newborn babies and attempting to murder 6 others. There is an apparent note indicating that she did it and saying that I am evil, I did this. That is what our note said. Very evil individual. And lastly, there's the potential. I'm not sure how confirmed this is. We'll see what Elon does with this, but Elon Musk is potentially disabling the block feature for X/Twitter. I'm still gonna call it Twitter. I don't care, but he potentially wants to disable this block feature for the platform. And there's a lot of controversy on whether this is a good or bad thing. So, what do you all think about what's going on in the society?
You
Well,
could go ahead, John, if you want.
no, I was going to say, you go ahead, Paul.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I don't know. For some of the blindside stuff, I found it pretty bizarre. The one thing though, I don't know if you've ever watched the movie before, but there's kind of
Oh, for
some
sure.
stuff within the book as well that kind of were telling. There's a part where Michael looks at a bed and I don't know how the scriptwriters let this get through. He looks at the bed and he asks, "What is that?" or something like that. And I mean, I rolled my eyes even when I was a kid watching it. Come on, give me a freaking break, you know? But at the same time, I'm kind of unsurprised. You kind of see a lot of these instances where some of these more wealthier families take advantage of these children and try to kind of bleed them out for a story. Not to say that, of course, there's a lot of good examples, but it's something that does exist.
Well, wasn't it similar with Taylor Swift that she
Yes.
had to break her conservatorship after many years? Um, and it's not something I know that much about, but I really understand this in the sense that when I was an attorney, I mean, you have such an unequal bargaining power in a sense. These poor kids come in and they're desperate for a home, they're desperate for a family. And if somebody isn't honest, and if there's nobody monitoring their honesty, that creates a real opening for them to be able to exploit young people like that. I mean, it seems to me that as part of the conservatorship, there should be some sort of mechanism where that's reviewed regularly and the person who's in under the conservatorship has an opportunity to speak about, grievances they may have or ways they feel they're being treated wrongly.
Well, the thing that's the most bizarre with stuff like that as well is that it actually permeates even past the person becomes an adult, right? Like that's like the most like bizarre element. And it happened with Taylor Swift as well. Like this was something that like actively, or was it Britney Spears? I don't know which one it was, but I know that
Oh,
it like
Britney Spears
existed
was
over
definitely
her.
one.
Yeah, like it follows these celebrities like the entire time, and there's just no way out. It seems unless there's like massive social pressure, and it seems bizarre.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Honestly, that might be a topic for another day in terms of like diving into the potential corruption that is conservatorships of young, inspiring individuals such as athletes or pop stars or movie stars, all that stuff. Because I feel like it's been talked about quite a bit with a lot of celebrities once they start growing up. Obviously, if everything's good and good, then they're okay. But for the most part, once they start speaking about it, I mean, I feel like even in situations where it's your own family member, there's definitely needs to be a conversation on how these young individuals are taken advantage of. I forget what example, because there's another example other than Britney Spears, but just like I think so the guy from Ned Declassified was talking about how he was taken advantage of. Like he got a lot out of it, but they're still kids at the end of the day. So that's definitely a conversation that needs to be had in the future. Um, but yeah, also I will say this. I've said it before on a different platform. I think there is validity on people not just being able to block whoever they want off of just like a whim. I think there's a valid argument that that's going to be a good thing overall in terms of social media. But conversation for another day, I'm sure. With that said, let's dive into the topic at hand. We're going to talk about unions, the pros and cons. And to kind of kick things off, Jonathan, why don't you introduce yourself, what you're about, what you do, and your involvement with unions, and then we'll get this conversation started.
Well, I have to go back actually historically to the 1950s when I was born in Washington, D.C. And as a child, even as a child, it was very apparent in a naive sort of way that DC was basically an apartheid city. All the white people were clustered on the northwest quadrant, and the rest of the city basically was black. And there was such a disparity of treatment that you could feel and see. One time we were driving as kids through the countryside in Virginia, and there was a chain gang, all of black prisoners, with the guards up on their horses, with the shotguns leaning on their big bellies. And, I just looked out and it was just sort of shocking to me. And then in 1960, when I was 10, we used to go to the Glen Echo Amusement Park. And in 1960, some stewards from Howard University started picketing Glen Echo to integrate it. And the rednecks came out of the woodwork and went so far as to pour bleach into the swimming pool. So here you are as a kid, and I can remember thinking to myself, it's 100 degrees here in DC, and this is one of the few places where you can go cool off. And why aren't they letting black kids go swimming with us? So, I mean, I could go on and more examples, but that left a really very, very deep impression on me in terms of what felt really inequitable. And as I got older, in 1964, the Ku Klux Klan killed 3 civil rights workers who were registering black people to vote in Mississippi, Goodwin, Schwerner, and Cheney. And I said to myself, they're like only a couple of years older than I am. And I said, I've got to do something about this. And I found my way to the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, one of the most active and aggressive civil rights organizations at the time. And I volunteered there. I used to take 3 buses to get across DC, and talk about another apartheid like boundary. The buses in the Northwest side were air conditioned. As soon as you got out of Northwest, the buses didn't have any air conditioning. And, that was where the black people lived. So black people didn't get air conditioned buses. So, those kinds of things were what sort of formulated my thinking when I later, went on to the university where we were very, very active. It was in Madison, Wisconsin, which was probably the epicenter in the whole country of student rebellion and student protest. And, from there, I went into to an automobile plant to begin organizing, because we realized that if we didn't take our vision to fundamentally change society out broader than among our fellow students, but to people who were in the working class that worked every day in the factories that made America run. And if we didn't try to bring to them a class consciousness of how capitalism works and why they're exploited as workers under capitalism, there were probably about 10,000 of us around the country in different political organizations that went to work taking industrial jobs to organize.
All right, all right. Paul, go for it.
Yeah, so like I was going to ask, you were back around when Students for Democratic Society and stuff like that were like a growing organization throughout the United States, right?
Yeah, in fact, when I went to Madison in 1968, there were 100,000 members of Students for a Democratic Society.
So I was like wondering if I could ask you before we get into some of the union stuff. I was going to ask, how big of an impact do you think student activists had on diluting the popularity of the war in Vietnam?
Oh, I think it was, I believe that it had a tremendous impact. I mean, I've read stories where Lyndon Johnson was cowering in the White House and he could hear the chants, "Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today?"
Oh, wow.
Um, and it was really a moral reckoning in society, because you have to remember there were only 3 news channels at the time, and they were fundamentally more honest than what's out there now with people like Fox and Friends. And the war was the main feature of the news every night. And we watched body bags coming back of US soldiers. We saw images of huge B 52s dropping napalm onto villages. And it was just something that if you had any humanity in you, you felt that there was no way you could sit by and not protest. And that protest became much more supercharged when the first Vietnam vets came back who opposed the war. Because I'll never forget, it was my first year in Madison in 1968, and a Marine who had been in Nam got up and gave a speech, and he broke down in tears about the people that he had carried a flamethrower. He used to be in a forward battalion or forward group, and his job was to just burn these huts to the ground with women and children in them. And the military, because of the enormity of the anti-war movement and how pervasive it was, including in the military, where there were over 200 underground anti-war newspapers in the military, that students played their role. But even more than that was the military rebelled. The soldiers on the ground rebelled, and endless stories of them refusing to fight, just going out 100 yards, sitting down and smoking weed, of second lieutenants getting shot in the back because people didn't want to go on these missions, that they didn't know why they were there and what they were fighting for. So I think a combination of the uprising of young people combined with the growing resentment and activity of the GIs is what really forced the end of the war. Near the end of the war, there was a demonstration. I think it was called Operation Dewey Canyon, and it shows Vietnam vets, some of them disabled, some of them in wheelchairs, some of them on crutches, walking by the Capitol, stopping and throwing their medal. This Purple Heart is for my brothers and sisters who died in Vietnam. This Medal of Honor, and they throw them at the White House. And one of the last GIs said, the next time I come back to these steps, it's going to be when we take it over. And that was the sentiment, that we wanted society to change so fundamentally that we felt we had the ability to completely reform and restructure it in a much more humane way that recognized people's basic human needs.
When do you think was the chief turning point in the war amongst I guess the American proletariat? Was it? Do you think it was the Tet Offensive, or do you think it happened earlier than that?
I think it began. No, I think it began to break through with the Tet Offensive when there was a lot. We used to do a tremendous amount of education. The organization I was in after SDS was called Mother Jones Revolutionary League. Mother Jones was an old, leader of the coal miners. And we would go into the dorms, and 3 nights a week, we'd go bang on doors and ask if we could come in and explain the facts of the Vietnam War. So we really educated students to the nature of the war and why it was so egregious and why it was really part of an imperialist effort to extend the U.S. control around the world. So to me, the culmination came when the National Guard shot 4 students and killed them at Kent State right after Nixon had invaded Cambodia. And not only was there an uprising on 200 campuses, and it's amazing to think about, we didn't even have fax machines, let alone cell phones. And somehow that occurrence was on a Friday, and by Monday, 200 universities were on strike protesting the Vietnam War. And I was part of the coalition in Madison that went out to the factories. We found 17 factories, hospitals, large.
Technical difficulties. Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think he's having some issues with his internet.
Yeah, it's Jonathan's end. Okay. Technical difficulties. We're gonna cut this out. Don't worry about it. We'll be all good.
Jonathan, if you can hear us, your internet is cutting out, and you're frozen on screen.
Very well received by the workers. It was no longer like when I started out in 1967 when we went to shut the induction center in Manchester, New Hampshire, and the workers had hung a banner out of an old shoe factory, said, "Better dead than red," and commies go home. And that sentiment really turned around by the end of the war and really challenged people to not blindly follow the government's policies.
Interesting. So on the union stuff, I was going to ask, I take it that you were underneath a lot of federal surveillance in your time of activism, right?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised, frankly. It took 3 efforts to get my FBI file because the first one was about 30 pages and 27 of them were just black. And I appealed it, and then I appealed it again, and that came almost 1,000 pages. And I've put up many of those pages on my website, www.jonathanmelrod.com, because when I started my union activity, I worked at an auto plant in Milwaukee, and you both are too young to remember it. It was American Motors, but we made the Pacer and the Javelin and some of those cars that are quite antiquated. But as soon as I got into the factory, it was just like carrying the rebellion that we had, been engaged in out on the streets to trying to change society, just moved into the factories. And very quickly, I found a group of particularly young vets from Vietnam of color. There were a couple of young women, Black women, who were church women who had a sense of organization and community, and others of us that were just young Woodstock generation type of young people. And we bounded together in the formation of a rank and file caucus. And we started out by the company came around to notify us on a Thursday that we would have to work Saturday over.
Oh no.
It's gonna be one of those episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, at least I can write down.
Yeah.
Jonathan, you are frozen. BTW.
He's not gonna know what that means.
You might. Okay.
Oh.
He cut out. We'll wait for him to appear back again. Hopefully he could fix the internet.
I'm gonna DM you something on a Discord really quick.
All right, bet. Oh, he's back.
So as I was saying,
Yeah.
there was, an absolute refusal. But the word came out that the president of the union, who was a pretty much had promised the company that he would deliver a workforce on that Saturday, and that by noon he picked me out and he said, John Melrod's the one who caused this problem. It was only a matter of time once that word came out. And there was, soon after that, the company increased the line of the assembly line 3 cars an hour. Now, if somebody hasn't worked on an assembly line, it's hard to explain how numbing and physically punishing working on 1 car a minute can be. But it's a real, you can feel it all through the body. And we decided that our caucus met and we would put out a flyer at the plant gates. The first time we had done it out in front of the plant.
Okay. The technical difficult. All right. That's so unfortunate. If it keeps happening, I'm gonna have to call it.
Yeah, we could call the entire episode and just grab it if you want, and then redo it.
We'll just talk about something else.
All right.
Workstation.
Hey, Jonathan Kiris.
I can now. Yeah. You couldn't hear
All
me?
right.
No, we
there's
couldn't hear you at all.
There's a lot of technical difficulties on your end. Do you have like tabs or anything open?
No, nothing.
Oh, we're
Nothing
trying to
at all.
we're trying to troubleshoot the issue right now. The problem is like halfway through when you were talking, we didn't catch any of it whatsoever.
You would freeze on screen. And
Yeah,
I didn't see anything.
I don't know, because nothing is irregular from when I always do these podcasts.
it could be StreamYard, Riddell.
It could be, but I've never had issues with StreamYard before. All right. Well, let's try it again. If something's wrong here, if it goes bad again, we might have to, scrap the conversation, because if you're like going out for like 30 seconds every 2 minutes you're talking, then it's just, just nothing's really working at that point. So we'll try again. I'm not really sure what the issue is right now, because this never really has happened before. What are you like located on the west side of the country?
Yeah, I'm out in California. But
I
it's
guess it.
odd because I do so many. I've probably done 40 podcasts now, and I'm not blaming you, certainly, Randall,
Yeah.
but but they've always been.
I mean, we had you on before. I have had you on before, and there wasn't an issue. So I have no idea what's going
Yeah.
on right now.
Okay.
It could be the servers for the service or something like that. I mean, I never know. Anyway, I got the next question ready if you're interested, Jonathan.
You know how crazy this whole new technology is. The other day they had a huge concert in Golden Gate Park. So many people were on their cell phones. The Waymo driverless computerized cars froze in
What?
the city wherever they were because they couldn't get the signal through.
Oh my God. There was just so much blockage.
Yeah, and one of them went into wet cement, which was the best.
Holy
Oh
smokes.
man, that is not good for image for those driverless cars.
No. Dude, I
Oh,
bet those cloud watch people are on suicide watch right now with all their stuff.
I'm imagining being the person in the car. I'm like, bro, what the? I'm just like stuck in the middle of the highway, just in this car, and I can't. There's nobody to talk to. I'm just like,
Nobody to talk to.
You just see it take a right off the freeway.
Let me tell you one other really quick story. But the kind of anarchist young kids who don't like these driverless cars have figured out that if you put an orange cone in front of it, it get paralyzed. It won't move. So they're
Really?
doing it all over the city. They run out, they drop a cone in front of one, and it's like their way of rebelling against new technology.
I know the big thing in Tampa that the cyclists were doing for a while is they were really pissed off with all the stuff regarding the scooters. And I think they chucked over like 200 of them into the bay, just like in the middle of a night or something like that, like just like full scale. And I can't blame them. I mean, like if you're a pedestrian around that area, those things are an absolute nightmare. And furthermore, they're charging you for like $25 for like a mile or two. It's insane. It's like worse than public transportation.
that
So
that is actually crazy. But like if it's having issues with an orange cone, I have no faith that it will be able to handle the trolley problem correctly. So the Waymo, and I think there's another company that does driverless cars as well. They might need to kind of go back to the drawing board with this one. Not gonna lie, it's not looking
Jonathan,
great.
are you frozen again? Uh-oh.
Jonathan, can you hear us? And Jesus.
I think we should reschedule.
Um,
This guy is cool to talk to, but yeah, we'll talk about it later.
and he's back.
Sweet.
All right.
I think we should give it another shot some other time, Randall. I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me.
Right on.
This isn't on you.
Yeah. Let's reschedule for a different day. And see if we can see if we can work something out. If anything, if we try again, if you can record your audio, that way, you would have your audio, I would have our audio, and then we might be able to figure something out. But yeah, let's just go for a different day, and then I'll send you. You have my calendar, so you can just go back to the calendar and just reschedule.
Oh, I go. Can you send me your link to your calendar? Because I don't. Actually, I'm very tech neophyte. I don't even know how to get to it.
All right, I'll just email you the calendar
Okay.
again.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you, man.
Okay,
problem.
yeah, you too, for sure.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
You have a good one. All right, that was unfortunate. Honestly, I'm tempted to go blooper episode. Oh man, if April was here, I could have just put this for a blooper episode.
This is awesome. I
But
like the way that he was so friendly. Like even at the end of it, he's like, "Oh yeah, this is on me. Like I'm sorry, guys. Like let's just redo it some other time." Very nice guy, down to earth.
yeah, he's a good guy. I've had him on before, like I said, and we didn't have these issues. Matter of fact, the other guy, he brought another one who was a Starbucks worker who's actually part of the Starbucks union. He was the one having technical issues, whereas Jonathan was, crystal. Now
Man.
he's just it's just not working. So,
What do you want to talk
um,
about, bro? Let's leave
we
this
could
in.
we could yeah, we could. You know what? This is a union episode. Let's talk about unions a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
We'll have Jonathan on and hear his story. And no, I'll just have Jonathan on. Okay, you guys are hearing
You're
a
lagging now
mid
too.
round. Am I lagging for you?
You're lagging now too. It's definitely the service. Yeah.
Is StreamYard just like fuck?
I think
Like
they could
screwed
be
up?
being DDoSed right now.
StreamYard just like destroying itself right now.
Yeah,
I'm not.
you cut out like for like 2 seconds and then you came back in.
StreamYard. You want me to go use Discord? I guess I should. This is good future reference. In the future, if this happens, probably should have a backup plan if StreamYard decides to. Because I've never had issues, but I guess might as well. Maybe Zoom. My only issue with Zoom, it has a 30-minute time limit. I don't know what's up with that.
You
Like,
can extend it if you have the membership or whatever that
I
bullshit
don't
is.
have a Zoom membership.
Yeah, I'm
What is it?
surprised. Why don't we just use Discord? Actually, I was about to ask this like a long time ago. Like, why
Because
don't
I
we
feel
just
like
record?
Discord has more issues than StreamYard, but we'll try. We'll try Discord.
I think it's a lot better. Alternatively, I can also like make like a new account and stuff like that, so I can have like a streaming only with the new Switch account system that they have.
Um, let's go. Yeah, let's go. Backup plan moving forward, just Discord.
Just Discord, okay.
Yeah, and
So, what do you think about the union stuff? Let's just get into it.
yeah, I guess let's talk about unions. I'm just gonna leave
Yeah.
all this in and just like
Yeah.
whatever. Screw this up. Screw it. It's just like, oh man, Jesus, what's going on?
Yeah.
It's like I'm putting the title. Sorry about this. But, oh Jesus. Um, I mean, I'm for me, I'm a definite advocate for unions. The premise is definitely there. When I'm like looking at my research when it comes to unions, and I was kind of similar to Jonathan, like we're all like pro unions and all that stuff. And I was trying to look up pros and cons for unions, try to get the full scope of the discussion regarding unions. And overall, it's a net benefit from my perspective because obviously unions, they help get you better pay, help you get better benefits. All that's all great stuff. I would have been curious to hear Jonathan's rebuttal to some of the criticism of the unions. Obviously, the first one would be regarding foreign competition, especially back in the day regarding Toyota. That's one of the reasons why people would criticize unions is because how our self-made automobile industry back then was crippled by unions and due to the workers and trying to get more pay and all the funds with that, the foreign competition being Toyota coming in the scene and making things better and much more cost effective for the industry made Toyota the primary car goer in America, obviously. So the one of the criticisms behind it is like, okay, if we keep on like, potentially pushing the edge for these businesses and we have foreign competition coming to the country and try to, offer a product at a more doable service for these big tech, big industries, how would you deal with that? What do you think about that?
So I guess like I'm gonna answer a question with a question. I kind of like ask myself the same thing, especially in relation to like public like works and stuff like that. So like the Biden administration made the controversial decision to I think break up the strike for the whole thing regarding Amtrak and the rail line workers. And I think nations are placed in pretty precarious situations in relation to like how do they uphold their overall cohesiveness in industry, all the while respecting labor rights, right? And I'm sure like Jonathan, who's probably a little bit more radical, would probably say well, labor rights are labor rights, and they can't be touched at all, right? But I think when the conversation shifts into the limelight of, what is it of the nation that's supposed to be done, right? Like, what is it that how do we preserve like these like industries and like preserve like overall economic buildup? I think the conversation can be a lot more muddied, and I think that's where a lot of liberals will start to bite the bullet and say we got to scratch these strikes out. Granted, I will note I do think the Republicans are pretty heavy-handed, as evidenced by. Are you familiar with the Reagan administration's PATCO decertification?
No, I think I've heard of it, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
So the background is PATCO is this air traffic controllers union. It stands for Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization. And it lost its certification because it performed a quote unquote like a legal strike at the time, and it violated. I'm like reading off the Wikipedia now. It violated 5 USC 118p, which prohibits strikes by federal government employees. So after that, the federal courts gave them injunctions ordering for it into the strike, and they refused to play ball with it. So after they refused to like kind of return to work, the the Reagan administration fired all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they fired almost like all like 12 to 13,000 of them.
Yeah, I think that's what I was listening to, that something like that happened, and then Reagan, uh and I guess it was Reagan. It was one of the presidents, and they just fired all of them, and then it was like the first time that something like this happened with a government union, right?
Yeah, it was like a big precedent that was set as well.
Yeah, it's so tough with like there's two ways I definitely look at it. Like the bigger picture. Once you really dive into it, you trying to find that fine line of like, okay, making sure that the workers are being compensated fairly based off, the market value of the company. Someone like Amazon obviously definitely has the funds to make sure that their workers are getting compensated properly. We've seen like the people would say that, bro, I can't even go to the bathroom before without getting criticized, stuff like that. So it's like,
Yeah.
stuff like that. We could definitely see like, okay, Amazon, one of the biggest companies, Bezos, buying $1 billion yachts. We kind of see, hey man, their money could definitely be utilized a little bit more appropriately, but on some of these other businesses and corporations that are definitely much more lower scale in terms of overall value, I'm curious on what line they draw in terms of the labor union, the labor workers compensation, meeting their needs based off societal standards, versus, okay, we don't want to breach the line to potentially hurt the company either immediately or like down the line, 5 to 10 years.
I think it applies, like, once again, right? Like, I think it applies to Title V in like 118 or page 118, right? Which like stipulates that like it's I think like outrightly illegal for federal government employees to strike at
Yeah.
all. And as a result of that, uh, I think that it can really dump it in terms of like the private world. So like Jonathan like brought up pretty well, like with all our right to work states, they do prioritize, I think, in the private world of protecting these companies. But in those non-right to work states and these like pro-union states, you really see um, some of these unions, rightfully for that matter, kick these companies down to the curb and beat the hell out of them. Like, I mean, look, like I talked about earlier, right? The UPS negotiations are pretty nutty already, and we're seeing some that might actually result in even bigger wins soon. And UPS is, I mean, let's be real here, right? UPS is already in a competitive environment with that of Amazon. And I think this strike and demands that are actually met could potentially like kill the company in a lot of ways, or cause a personnel drought. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think that's something valid to say. I would have to like obviously figure out, or I would be curious on like the overall numbers, because I don't. Does like Amazon own any service? I know, when it comes to
Delivery.
like, and I know I'm saying like obviously when someone delivers a package, it would still go to another company to deliver it, right? Whether that be like FedEx or
Yeah, yeah.
something else.
I think they use UPS, FedEx, and Postal Service
I know they
as.
have their own trucks too, but they also like use those ones as well. I'm
Yeah,
curious like
but
how that works.
isn't the fleet expanding? Like as far as I know, right? Like because
Yeah.
I see more and more of them. Not, and this is also leaving out the individual carriers that like are contract ones. That you've probably seen those people driving around their own cars delivering your packages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I
And
don't
they're trying
know.
to bring out drones too. Like Amazon is really trying to cut out the middleman out of here, bro.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're like playing a whack-a-mole with the postal service, FedEx, and oh, what's the other one? I can't believe I'm forgetting it now. UPS. Yeah, it's unreal, and I think that they're going to be able to pull it off, which sucks.
yeah. So, I mean, for a company like Amazon, the unions definitely have its value. I guess the thing is making sure that unions kind of know where they need to stop. And I don't know if we have a system put in place because obviously a lot of their positions and potential like uh policies that they want to emit for the labor unions are going to be in behalf of the workers, as they say. I watched this one video and someone was talking about labor unions, and this is very appropriate, is that they're constantly looking at the workers. And one of the criticisms behind this is like sometimes they don't know how to take their eyes off the workers, where it's like maybe a manager wants to be part of a labor union. I mean, he's like, bro, this guy's just not good at his job. I need to fire him. And then there could be people in the union going like, I don't care, chill out. And another argument that I've heard is that the star workers who are really like doing their best and standing out from the rest are not getting highlighted as much due to the treatment of all workers need to be treated equally to an extent, and they don't really kind of compensate merit in a way is another criticism for labor unions. So I would be curious for Jonathan's point of view is like with their hierarchy structure of labor unions. Obviously there's like a leader, and I'm sure there's like branches and all that stuff. Do they have someone to ensure that they're going to make the hard decisions? And I think Canada, well, this is for contracts. I think Canada has like an arbiter, or an unbiased arbiter, in their labor union situations. But I'm curious for like the other circumstances that Jonathan's with. Do they just everybody's on the same side and nobody really tells them no? I'll be curious about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, by the way, do you want to end this early or not? Because we've only got like 15 minutes till 9, and I don't think we're gonna be able to talk about much without him, unless you got an itinerary.
We can end this in about 15 minutes. It's
All
gonna
right,
be
let's do it.
the funny,
Yeah, the
go
goober
crazy
episode.
episode.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think like I guess like I'll answer, well, I'll throw a dart here and I'll say this is what he'd probably say. He'd probably say blow me in regards to the in regards to the merit stuff, right? Like it's not what matters at all. Compensation for people throwing out their back on these lines matters the most. Like he brought up, like when he was talking about the working on the line to try to get like 3 to 4 cars out per shift or like per hour, right? Is pretty brutal, I think, especially considering back then. So I think that a lot of the meritocratic elements of it, right, are just distractors from the bigger problem, which is the fact that a lot of working class people in this country just get treated like dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that. It's one of the more nuanced situations, because obviously some unions are also treated by crap from like big businesses. We've seen this where they can fire certain employees for the littlest of things. It's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, you didn't do this procedure right, you're fired. and they're the only reason why they're doing this, we know, is because, oh, they're part of a union, but you have to prove that. And even in these situations where you can prove it, and they fired someone for being part of a union, which is illegal, by the way, all that will happen
Mhm.
in a lot of these situations is that they would come back to their job, get back pay, and say, oh, I'll never do it again. So it's just not a actual like deterring punishment for a lot of these situations. Not only to mention like union meetings, which is like anti-union meetings, which certain companies have, saying, hey, this is bad for the culture and don't join a union. So these things can definitely happen where these businesses are being unfair to a certain extent. So
Mhm.
there's two sides to see it, where like the businesses are having, utilizing their power and being, you could say, corrupt in a sense, but there's also the bigger picture that I'm not sure unions consider, with making sure that things are not only benefit the workers but benefit the country as a whole. It's bigger than the immediate raise in paycheck and benefits. um I think I saw Lex Freedom talking about, in terms of the collective bargaining, if the pay keeps on going up, eventually the business is gonna uh go out of business and go bankrupt.
Well, I mean, that's the reason why they bargain, right? Like, not all strikes are bound to win, right? Because
Yeah.
employers, like the thing, I guess, like what a lot of pro union people like myself will tell you is that these things kind of exist as means to gauge and point out that these companies do know they can pay us out, right? It's just that they like refuse to do it because it'll hurt some margin, right? So like the history of unionization has basically been this big thing where these unions kind of arise and they just like point out, look, we can make a lot more money and like be treated significantly better, and we know you guys can pay us without your company being destroyed, right? And I think that's the thing that kind of matters the most. I got a lot of respect for Lex, but if that's his characterization of it, I think he's just flat out wrong, and it seems like it's alarmism to me. The reality is like the natural existence of bargaining, and furthermore company lawyers that exist to bargain, is the thing that's going to always like make it so there's a conclusion reached between these two actors and stuff like that, right? Will some companies be killed by strikers? Of course, right? Will a lot of these companies killed by strikers be bailed out by the federal government? Probably. You know what I mean? Like, so like look, a lot of my friends, like I have a good friend of mine who's a lot more libertarian. He'll probably call me heartless for this, but to the bleeding companies, I say let them bleed, right? Like my arms with the working people and the people of the United States, and I really can't give two about anything around these companies like survival, right? Because the reality is like our objective is just to win these like strikes, to win these things, to get the concessions we need, right? To see how far we can go and ride that horse to the finish line. So that's why I've
Yeah.
always said it.
I'm not mad at it. Overall, I agree with the premise of unions, because we need some way to check these companies.
Yeah.
Obviously, being a capitalist society, for the most part, so we always have to keep them in line in some way, and the unions are the best way to do that. I'd be curious on your thoughts on like creating a unbiased arbiter into policy to handle all union bargaining situations.
Could you say that again? I didn't really fully catch it.
So I'd be curious on your stance to make this into policy, because this is not a policy for America, but I know it's policy for Canada to an extent. Well, you can definitely, okay. Mostly we're focusing on bargaining, so we're focusing on the contract and the deals themselves.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious on your idea of like unbiased arbiters that is here to kind of I guess mediate, moderate the deal
Oh,
between both
yeah.
sides.
Like I think they're called mediators in like court, right? Like people that exist as like in arbitration. Um I don't really know because like I feel as if it's like it's a unique relationship between that of the company and the union itself. And I'm not really sure what it these arbiters would actually kind of do. Maybe the thing I'd be actually, I don't know if I'd be in favor of it because I'm not sure, and I'll say it out loud, right? I'm not sure if I'd want for the union's demands to be like fully publicly known, right? And like what's talked about by council in the sessions that are had, right? Like the thing we have to acknowledge is that we're political actors just as so much as the companies are. And I think the companies would even agree with us in this case, where they would say, yeah, I don't want arbitration because both sides of the aisle have a lot to lose out of doing it, right? Like the union, for example, could say something cavalier or make consideration for something that's politically unpalatable. And then the company, of course, could just outrightly refuse certain things and make them look bad as well. So I think like arbitration kind of naturally entails the other element of public knowledge. I think that's like kind of what comes after it. And I'm sure you'd probably agree, right? Like when arbitration is involved, then that means that you can have freedom of information request accessible for those court files.
Hmm. I definitely see your argument. I would have to
Yeah.
kind of think it over because I do think there is a certain level of value to have that
Privacy.
type of mediator.
Yeah.
Um, to go off that point, right? So instead of having someone to kind of mediate these contracts, in terms of like the union agencies themselves, what would you say to, let's say, an organization that, like, the people who do DEIs, right? All that stuff, right? I know they one of the things they do for the CEI, I think that's what it's called, um, corporate equality index. They send in an agent to go to all these businesses to make sure that they're adhering to the LGBT diversity standards set by those rich
See,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, those rich people that's in control of these organizations. I think it's I mean, it's run by, obviously, like the Black Rocks, the Soroses type individuals. What would you
Eh,
say for like an agent to show up to unions to make sure that they're abiding by a more, um, let's say, a effective standard in realizing the big picture, maybe realizing that, you know going into the meritocracy stuff that we were talking about before. What would you say having an agent doing that in order to, I don't know if you could argue it would make unions more efficient or not, but having that type of
uh,
figure in these situations.
yeah, I think it's prone to subversion. Like, I think that it's like gonna run into a lot of risk of extra or like other parties getting involved in like financing these organizations to try to like politically or economically make them unviable, right? I feel as if that it can be used as like a hit piece, and if it's not the government, like I don't really trust it. Like a lot of these
I mean,
companies
they are
don't.
already like fighting for the left anyway,
Uh,
so would it
look,
change that much?
I will. I'll tell you the thing that I said, like with the other stuff, right? Like I find that other stuff to be like a nothing burger. I feel as if like it should just be outrightly rejected and ignored by these companies as well. The bigger problem is just simply that these companies allow these things to like kind of play ball and like dominate our cultural spaces, right? The federal government should be the thing that ensures the civil rights of homosexuals, transsexuals, bisexuals, etc., are the ones that are covered, right? It shouldn't be that of a private institution that has significantly more proneness, I guess, to being subverted by extra financiers. So, like, I hate that stuff just as much as I hate like the idea of there being this like other company that kind of like sends its goons out to make sure the meritocratic nature of the union is like still existing. Like that's up to the union leadership and the electorate. Like those guys, they vote on everything, and they're the ones that make sure it gets done. I think AFL-CIO does have some form of that. Where, for example, if you do join AFL-CIO or you do join LCLAA, right? What happens is that they kind of like introduce themselves and they say, look, we have codes if you're going to be underneath the net of the unions that we provide, right? Like we'll give you legal services in return, right? But you have to meet a certain standard. But this is something that is like ran by the union and is like still something that's relatively elected, right? These private companies are they're contracted, and I mean, the that money talks, and I don't want it to really get into it. You know what I mean?
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Overall, both of us are here are pro unions.
Yeah.
They're good for society. They're good for capitalism. To keep these big businesses that's already getting bigger, as we know, in check for the most part. Um, the conversation on unions and whether or not they can see beyond their current agenda is a conversation that I definitely think should be had. But to use that as ammunition to dismiss all unions, I think is pretty lazy because I see people try to make those cases. I saw someone trying to make the case that government unions are all bad because people's tax dollars go into paying for government workers who their dues go into paying for the unions. I'm like, this is a very lazy take to kind of dismiss like unions at the end of the day. But it's not a perfect. It's definitely not perfect. So there's potential solutions to go about how to make sure that the unions are more efficient and the unions are making sure that what they're doing is not only in the benefit of the workers, but in benefit of the country as a whole.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up this very messy episode of Purple Political Breakdown, it's a comedic episode. Hope you guys laughed. Who's listening? I'm curious on your thoughts about this, Paul, because I feel like this it could be a social subtopic. It could be a debate I have on someone's panel. I don't know when it could happen. But what do you think about the block feature being disabled on Twitter? Do you think it's a good
Okay, bro.
idea?
It is a terrible idea, right?
Yes.
Like, look, to quote Tyler the Creator, if you're being cyberbullied, just turn off the screen, right? I think there's some truth to that, right?
Yep.
That being said, I'm sure you've run into these people before. You could run to some real cretins online. That block feature is pretty much like the greatest quality of life thing that exists. And I think that in general, social media sites are supposed to enhance their quality of life for their applications, right? And removing those things because of this supposed axiom that exists, like, ideological consistency of free speech and like how people can't block you. I think it's a little bit lame, right? And I'm sure, a lot of these conservatives, like even Jonathan would probably agree, our co-host would probably agree and say, yeah, it's right. Because like realistically, let's say, for example, there's some like batshit insane, like leftist that's in Jonathan's DMs telling him that they want to rape and murder his entire family. And they just like keep saying it over and over again. Or they say it in a public post where you can't block them because you can block the DMs, right? Still, that's what Elon said. I think that that's something that you should be able to just tune out, right? Like, so you don't have to deal with that anymore. And to the dissenter saying "grow up," I just say get fucked, right? Like, it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem worth the time. I think blocking is a really great feature. I think, like I said earlier, it's a quality of life thing, and it's worth having around.
Yeah, so I completely disagree. It goes
What?
it goes with my framework that social media is pushing people into echo chambers, and the block feature is hand in hand with that. The quality of life stuff, I don't really buy.
Sure.
I do think that if you're going to disable the block feature, your moderation team needs to be stronger, and your ban team needs to be stronger to the point where if someone goes into someone's DM and say I'm gonna rape and murder your family, you could, hey,
Report
this
it.
guy is crazy. Ban him from the platform. He doesn't even need to be on the platform. So at
Sure.
that point, those extreme cases can be banned. But my issue is not necessarily like those extreme cases. I feel like people just block people just because they just don't want to hear their voice be heard. And I think that's the biggest problem I feel like that's going on social media is where people are trying to create very narrow algorithms, which is plays into the also the potential bad things for social media algorithms versus business algorithms or marketing algorithms, is that people are getting fed a certain way of thinking and then diving deep into that way of thinking and going into their corner of the internet. So I think that it's bad for discourse, especially when we're trying to advertise. I'm calling it Twitter. I'll never call it X. When we're trying to advertise Twitter as a what is it called? I keep on forgetting the terminology. Open, public, square. And when I try to
Yeah.
advertise Twitter as the public square, it should be a place where everybody's voices are
So
being heard. Unless, like, if you want to block someone, it better be a really damn good reason.
all right, so I'm gonna push back on this, Riddell. Right, I think that you are wrong about this. Right, I think I'll agree with you, and here's the middle ground I'm offering to you. Right, we allow for them to get rid of protected tweets. Okay, that shit's bullshit. It's got to go. Like that is the dumbest feature ever. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Where you have to pay to see the tweets.
Oh no, not just that, which is also really annoying. I'm talking about where you have to follow the person or they have to follow you to respond to the tweet itself.
Oh,
You
gotcha,
know what I'm
gotcha.
talking about, where the
Yeah.
comments are blocked? That's bad, right? Blocking, I think, shows individual choice and makes it significantly more evident, right? And furthermore, a block in a lot of ways is kind of like throwing down a sword, right? Blocking someone is usually seen as pretty cavalier and I guess what, like dishonorable, right? But still, I still think blocking is great because it kind of like adds in another element to where whenever Twitter is not actually fully like banning people on time, it just gives you the ability to kind of like get away from the problem there. And I don't think it actually causes these echo chambers. Granted, I'll throw you a bone here. I think it's going to be funny when D-Man gets out there and starts getting into Vaush and Hassan's Twitter when they can't block him anymore, right? I think that'll be pretty good, right? But like, look, like on my Twitter, I have people that mess with me a lot and stuff like that, and it's just not fun. Like having the block feature has been the greatest thing ever, and furthermore, I still don't actually have an echo chamber because I still have like conservative people like up in my replies like telling
But
me
you're like one of the
XYZ.
good ones. I don't. You
Hey,
know, all those progressive left, they're gonna just block all the righties and just fill it to and the
well,
righties gonna do the exact same thing.
I
Especially if
would
you
rather have
go
those
ahead.
people like locked away in their echo chambers, honestly, Riddell. Like, because the good thing is for us as a society, we don't have to deal with them at all, right? Like, I'm sure you would agree. You would rather not have the fucking brony who is an communist, right? Talking about like abortion with Tucker Carlson, right? Like that's like something that like I'm sure we could all agree would just be absolute like nightmarish, and we'd all be saying, "What has happened to this country?" Right?
So, I mean, for me, there's two ways I always approach these conversations: my personal ones,
Yeah.
and my ideological consistency. So, like, just these are two very different things. And when I'm looking at society, I think I would be more in line with like maybe a limited feature where it's like, okay, this guy's going too ham. Let me limit the amount of content I see on my homepage versus just like disabling their existence from everything, like their existence gone, blocked. Like I just don't think that's like coincides with genuine human interaction, which is my problem with that overall. I do hear what you're saying, but I guess this will be a agree to disagree point for now, but I'm sure this debate will
Sure.
come up again in the future. With that said, I just remembered, I'm glad you said that. I just remembered something else that was said, and I was trying to figure out what this other point that I saw on the timeline was, and now I remember it because you talked about Tucker Carlson. Apparently, I don't even know if this is true. I just saw this on the timeline. Apparently, Vivek was advocating for raising the age of voting to 25 years old. Is something that I heard. Which
Vivid?
is, yeah, the Republican nominee.
Which one is? Hold on.
He's the younger one
Oh,
that's
I'm a
like,
Swami. Yeah. Look, dog. I think I've talked about him before. I hate this guy. Like,
I don't think you said this here because I think John actually likes this guy, especially in
yeah,
comparison
of
to
course, fucking
Trump
John
and
likes this guy, dude. Like,
But if you had to pick a lesser of three evils, I would rather have Vivek than like
like
DeSantis and Trump.
all respect to John, right? But like this like bookworm like politician thing has got to go. Okay, like Ramaswamy is like an absolute joker. Like, I mean, he's already made like public policy statements about getting rid of inheritance and stuff like that. something that
Inheritance.
yeah, bro, something that I'm sure Jonathan himself would probably be against, right? And furthermore,
Inheritance.
but like on the topic, I know the inheritance. Yeah,
Now,
like
as long as he gets rid of estates as well, if he
oh,
wants to
dude,
get rid.
absolutely not. Like I've got something to gain, Riddell. I got something to gain. like like okay, scratches from the record. Riddell, I recently just got 4 cameras from my grandpa, right? And I'm living at large right now, okay? I've got that champagne socialism going on, and
I
I'm
respect
living
it.
it up.
Hey,
Yeah.
man, if I'm LeBron James's child and he said get rid of inheritance, who the heck are
Yeah,
you?
whoa, who are you talking to right now?
Oh, that would be crazy.
But no,
With
it did
that said, to
happen.
to
I know.
focus on the
Yeah.
age thing, I was thinking in my mind like changing the age of voting from 18 to 25.
It's
I'm
ludicrous.
thinking it's like it's
It's crazy.
ridiculous, but at the same time, like
No,
low
dog,
key,
don't do
low
this.
key,
No,
if
no,
we
don't do this,
had
bro.
if we take out like the 24,
Bro,
23, 22, 21, 19, 18-year-old voters,
Riddell.
how would that change? The Democrats would be losing a lot, but I'm just saying,
Dude,
like,
Riddell, yeah, okay. I'm happy you acknowledge this. Is just like a GOP power grab, bro.
I 100%. I was like, bro, you're just trying to like enforce the Republicans. I 100% saw that a mile away.
Dude, I saw it, and like my dad and I are at smoke, and he's trying to do this like thoughtful discourse bullshit. He's like, I think he's on something. I'm like, bullshit. He's not on to anything right now. I know what this motherfucker's doing. He's trying to win elections. That's what he's trying to do. But no, the thing I was gonna bring up with Ramaswamy. Did you hear about what he talked about recently with about Ron DeSantis?
No, what do you say?
He publicly said that he's only running to poison Ron DeSantis's chances of winning the election, bro. He's
Is
on
he a
that spite
Trumper or
game.
something?
Oh, dude, I think he 100% is a Trumper. Yeah.
Oh my god! Like,
Bro, he wants to make America great again, Riddell.
see, I'm not a Vivek guy either because everything I saw about Vivek is only culture war stuff. And if any nominee makes their platform just culture war, you are not selling me. I hate, bro. Talk about something, but
yeah.
no, that vote stuff was if like, I mean, obviously that's never gonna happen, but hey, man. Maybe you 18 or 19-year-olds need to get better at like your understanding of politics. I don't know. Maybe it's your fault.
Look, I mean, like, let's just like do the inverse here, right? Like, think of all these like plus 60-year-olds that are out there voting, right? Like, I mean, look, I talked to this one voter one time during the Biden administration, and this old lady, I felt so bad for her. She's like talking to me, and she goes, like, we need to like expand the Patriot Act further to prevent 9/11 from happening again. I was like, what? Like,
if you're taking out 18 to 24-year-olds, you better start taking out the 70-year-olds plus.
This is middle-aged voter country, sir. Okay, like
you got a wrinkle?
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna have the voting like Gestapo coming around town, looking at your fucking hairline, like just coming out of people.
But being realistic, it would be a terrible idea to set a precedent that we can edit voting rights.
Of
like
course,
that's the worst thing you could ever do in America. That's bad idea. Bad idea. Republicans getting so like black pilled in terms of anti-establishment, they might even try to like advocate for that, which is a terrible thing.
I think they're just going to become like secessionist one day and just like fucking go crazy. Like
they
I
keep
think
on talking about Texas and Florida seceding. So
yeah, I did. If they do that, like if Florida secedes from the United States, like you're going to see me on CNN. Okay, like that's like a guarantee. All right, like
Florida secedes and then we capture Mexico, make it another territory in Florida.
I'm gonna be publicly executed by like the Florida militia at that point. You're gonna like see it 100%. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Florida is they're gonna be a straight dictatorship over there. 100%.
Oh yeah, it's the DeSantis Reich, bro. Like it's gonna happen for sure. But anyway,
that's crazy. But yeah, this is all we got for today. Like I said, it was a very chaotic episode. It is what it is, right? We still had a good conversation about unions. That still happened in today's episode. But with that said, we will be back. If you're listening, the next episode will be about climate change. So hopefully we don't have a lot of the technical difficulties, and that conversation is going to be fun as well, I'm sure. So, hope you guys enjoyed. Rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that great stuff. You can visit the website, www.purplepoliticalbreakdown.com. Send us an email of your thoughts, or, if you want to send us money, you can do that as well. Except the scammers, stop sending me scam emails.